The trial of Joan of Arc was not a quest for truth, but a political butcher's shop masquerading as a holy church. For months on end, a 19-year-old girl who could neither read nor write stood utterly alone, shivering in the damp chill of a secular military cell. She was surrounded by tiers of looming, shadow-drenched judges and 60 of the most ruthless, highly trained legal minds in Europe, all bought and paid for by the English crown. Her captors badgered her with theological traps night and day, desperate to break her spirit, wanting her to weep, wanting her to beg for mercy. Instead, she stood tall in her faded, stained military tunic, her jaw set and her eyes burning with an unshakable inner light as she shone like polished steel against their venomous accusations. But steel can be bent if you apply enough misery, isolation, and terror. Her English guards tormented her relentlessly, and the ultimate cruelty came from within her own homeland. King Charles VII, the very sovereign she had bled for and triumphantly crowned at Reims, sat in comfort on his gilded throne and chose absolute silence, offering not a single coin for her ransom. Trapped in the clutches of her enemies, they finally gave her an agonizing choice: sign a document denying her heavenly visions and put on a dress, or face the consuming agony of the fire that very afternoon. Terrified and exhausted, she signed the abjuration to choose life, but in a stone cell ruled by brutal soldiers, a dress was nothing less than an invitation to violence. To guard her physical body and shield herself from assault, she was forced to put the protective tunic and breeches back on just days later. With that single, desperate act of self-defense, the political trap snapped shut instantly. Bishop Cauchon stood at her cell threshold with a grotesque smile, pointing a cruel, final finger as he declared her a relapsed heretic, condemned to burn. The morning of May 30th was suffocatingly clear as they marched her into the crowded old market square of Rouen, surrounded by 10,000 onlookers and a ring of English soldiers holding sharp spears. They forced her to wear a mocking, pointed paper cap that read heretic, relapsed, apostate, idolater, making her look agonizingly small against the towering mountain of firewood stacked high above the crowd. Even the executioner's hands trembled with dread as he bound her frail, shaking frame to the wooden stake with heavy iron chains, yet she did not curse her executioners or the silent king who betrayed her. She only wept and begged for the comfort of a cross. An English soldier, deeply moved to tears by a raw grief he couldn't understand, tied two small wooden twigs together and handed the crude symbol to her. She pressed the rough wood tightly against her breast, weeping into the wind as the first heavy columns of black smoke crept up her white linen gown and the crackling heat began to blister her skin. Through the suffocating heat and blinding orange flames, she kept her eyes fixed toward the heavens, her tears clearing clean streaks through the dark soot on her cheeks. 6 times she screamed that holy name: Jesus, 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 through the rising fire, 6 times until the toxic smoke finally filled her lungs and the roaring flames consumed her voice entirely. When the fire finally burned down to embers, nothing remained of the legendary girl who saved France but a pile of ash cast into the river Seine, leaving behind a hardened English soldier who dropped his sword into the dirt, buried his face in his hands, and wept, knowing they had just damned their souls by burning a saint.